The Canadian Union of Postal Workers has tabled new offers to Canada Post after both sides returned to the bargaining table this week. Striking Canada Post workers were forced back on the job in December by legislation from Ottawa. Remember that? But this round of negotiations that's happening right now, it's happening after Canada flight attendants they had a similar order, raising questions about how these talks could be affected. Joining us now is lawyer Lily Coodin. Lily, I find this really fascinating. Good morning to you, firstly. Nice to see you.
Good morning. Nice
how could the way in which Air Canada's strike was resolved affect what happens with Canada Post?
It could definitely have an effect. I think anyone working in a unionized context, especially Canada Post, is looking closely at what happened with Air Canada. The federal government intervened and the union said, actually, we're not going to comply with that order. We never had to see what would eventually happen because the two sides reached an agreement. But absolutely, if you are a union engaged in negotiations right now, you're thinking, is this a tactic I may want to use in the future?
I was wondering that because, as we know, they were ordered back to work. The flight attendant said, no, we're not doing that. So then, and now here we are with a tentative agreement that they have to vote on, right? So how could this affect really all industries, and how striking workers really relate to that back to work legislation going forward?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of skepticism, I would say, especially on the union side, about the federal government's intervention in these types of cases. Typically, a negotiation would happen between the union and the company, and in an ideal world, they would reach an agreement. But we do have certain mechanisms that allow the government to intervene, and we've seen the federal government in particular do this quite a bit using the Canada Labour Code, Section 107. That's what we saw in Air Canada, and people are wondering, what is the value of Section 107 if a union can say, actually, we don't like that order and we're not going to comply. So I think everyone is taking note, and we will probably see more of this going forward.
And on the flip side of that, I saw a lot of posts from Air Canada employees saying that the company was relying on 107 as well.
That's right. It tends to be more favorable to the company. Striking is one of the major tactics that a union has in order to apply pressure to the company to return to the negotiating table, to strike a deal. And if you take away that ability to strike, which is, by the way, a constitutionally protected right, that is a major tool that the union loses. So this tends to be more favorable to the company.
So what do we know about where negotiations stand right now between the union and Canada Post?
What we know is that they have been in negotiations for about 18 months, which is not a short period of time. We did see that strike happen right around Christmas time. They were mandated back to work, but they've been in a legal strike position since May. Canada Post Canada Post submitted an offer that was rejected by the union. The union has just given a counter offer. So Canada Post said that their last offer was their last offer, but now we have an offer by the union, and we'll see if that gets accepted or not.
A lot of people are wondering about the bottom line because in 2024, Canada Post reported a $1.3 billion operating loss. The last time it was profitable was back in 2017. So people are wondering, how can Canada Post offer more money to workers when it seemingly doesn't have more money to offer?
Yeah, it's a real challenge. I mean, this is a company, as you said, that's been losing money for 7 years. We really need to strike a balance where employees need to be treated fairly. They need to be paid a living wage, but you also need a viable business on the other end of it, and it needs to preserve some flexibility to change in order to adapt to changing circumstances. The real difficulty is that when there is looming job action, there doesn't have to be a strike, but just the threat of a strike, you actually see a compounding effect where people start to move their business away from Canada Post in anticipation of a potential disruption. And that can do even more harm to the company's bottom line.
If this latest offer is not accepted by Canada Post, then what happens?
We'll see. I mean, it's possible that we'll see a strike, and this could be a scenario where Section 107 gets used again, and then we'll have to see whether the union complies or not. But I think there's also a general feeling that there may not be an appetite for a strike. You know, we've just had Air Canada on strike, and as much as public opinion maybe shouldn't affect what happens between these two parties, often it is a factor. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens with this newest offer.
Lawyer Lily Coodin, thanks for your time. We appreciate it this morning.
Thank you.